Hi, I'm Alex.
And I'm Amy.
Our project is called Mind, Body, and Soul, The Nature of Well-Being, and this podcast is just one small piece of the overall project. We are making a documentary that follows our hike on the Continental Divide Trail that will explore how spending time in nature affects a person's mental, physical, and spiritual well-being.
We are guinea pigs in a sense because we will be documenting our own experiences and recording changes that we find. Along the way, we are interviewing people about their experiences in nature to see how they have been affected.
Much of the benefits that come from being in nature are subjective, and therefore hard to measure in a quantifiable way. That's why we have turned to recording stories as a way to distribute this knowledge. Since the beginning of human culture, we have compressed valuable information into stories, and that's how we have shared wisdom throughout the generations.
We hope that the stories we gathered during this project will help spread some of the wisdom that can be found in the wilderness. Episode 6, an interview with Tony Pompa about starting a guided wilderness expedition company. Tony Pompa found the benefits of being in the wilderness later in life when he was in a transition period between jobs. Some things in life weren't going as planned, and a section hike on the Appalachian Trail gave him the time to reflect and look at life from a new perspective. Now he runs a guided wilderness expedition company called True North Expeditions. His goal is to help introduce people to wilderness trips and help them overcome the barriers that can prevent them from getting into the wilderness.
Okay, my name is Anthony Pompa, P-O-M-P-A.
Okay. Where are we right now?
So right now we're in Huntley, Illinois, which is about 45 minutes west of Chicago.
This is True North headquarters?
Yeah, I guess you could call it that. It's where we store our gear, and pretty much most of our trips leave from this location. So normally we have a passenger van that we transport people. It's a 15-person passenger van, and that's normally on my driveway actually, but right now it's in storage because it's winter.
Yeah, I was going to ask where that was.
Yeah, it's being stored right now. So.
Okay. So what is this company? What are you...
So our primary mission is to get people outdoors that might not normally feel comfortable doing so on their own. We do that in a couple different ways. We put together different types of events every year, those being boot camps. So we have a beginner's boot camp, an advanced boot camp. We actually just added an intro to hiking and backpacking event that we started last year. And so that event is just an overnight, basically, drive up campsite. We'll camp the first night, and then the second day, which would be like Saturday morning, we'll spend about 3 to 5 hours going over all the basics, gear, which gear you'll need, clothing, food, water, anything like that, and just kind of giving them a pretty broad overview of what's involved. And then from there, we take them on about a 2 to 3 mile hike afterwards. So we do those types of events. We also have weekend-long events, so like a Friday through Sunday, and then we also do week-long 5 to 7 day trips, including canoe trips in Boundary Waters. We go to Kentucky once a year over Memorial Day weekend for a yoga / kayaking, and this year we're actually adding some rock climbing into that. So that's our big yoga event every year. So the other thing that we do is we rent gear. So as you can see behind me, we have a whole collection of gear here, and we're able to outfit a number of people and to help them get outdoors. And that the nice thing about that is people don't have to spend $1,000 on gear to get out on their first event. They can rent the gear from us. We take care of everything. We have a pack fitter, so we make sure they got the right size pack. And we're there to help them set everything up and make them feel a little bit more comfortable with that. So.
That was actually one question I was going to ask Heather is what are the barriers to entry to get into something like this? And cost is definitely one of them.
Yeah, cost for sure. I think that really a lot of people, once they make that first step and they kind of break that, as you said, that barrier, I think to me it seems like it's more not knowing necessarily and having us available to reach out and ask questions. We did, when we went to Boundary Waters last year, I actually did about a 30-minute video on the gear and how I packed my gear, because I used a portage pack for that trip. I did another video on water filtration and just some different systems. I used the Sawyer system, but there's some variations to that and kind of the system that I had set up, that I had rigged for a trip. But I think that a lot of people don't necessarily feel comfortable even making that first stop. And I think what I've seen, at least, people reading our reviews, getting to know some other people that have been on trips. We get a lot of clients that end up bringing their friends or people they've known, acquaintances from the outdoor aspect of their life, end up coming to the events, and then they end up booking more events with us. So
yeah, I think you need that like first experience just to kind of get over the overwhelming aspect of like, what is this and how do I do it? And
right. I'd say about 3/4 of the people that come to our events have part of their gear at least, or are eager to buy their own gear. So I'd say we get maybe for our beginners boot camps, we get quite a few rentals on those events, but for the most part, the other events, people are coming with their own stuff. Or the other nice part about us is we can piecemeal together gear. So if you're like, I don't have a stove, I don't have a sleeping bag, but I have everything else, we can rent you those items individually. So.
Okay, we'll get more into the specifics about the country or the company in a bit, but I'll get through these kind of general questions first. So, have you been interested in hiking and nature and backpacking and that stuff your whole life, or was it something that you like learned about recently?
I would say that I probably fell into it really later in life. In high school I went camping a little bit here and there. Spent a lot of time cycling outdoors like everyone else. In my early adult life, I spent a little bit of time outdoors. I had a couple day hiking trips to Colorado when I was out there. Snowboarding in Oregon here and there, but nothing really like what I'm doing now. So it's kind of funny that I'm so involved in it at this point in my life, because I just wasn't earlier in life. And I guess I feel like I kind of missed some of that, in my, I don't want to say my childhood, but my teen years and then early adult life. So I'm kind of making up for that now. So
yeah, it's funny. I feel like I missed out a little bit because I didn't really discover this stuff until college. But I could have been a lot later for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like grown up going to lakes and swimming and being outside all the time when I was a kid, but never really like doing bigger trips and
or
anything like that.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because a lot of our clients are, we're predominantly getting women signing up for our events, although we have had I'd say about 6 to 8 men sign up for our stuff. But a lot of the people that we're getting on our trips are people that are older adults and their kids are finally gone for school, or maybe they've recently gone through a divorce or a loss of a spouse, and they're finally able to take that time to get outdoors. And so we're seeing, quite a bit of those people too, it's nice to be able to be so helpful to them to experience nature and the outdoors when they're kind of in a transition in their life.
Mm-hmm. That seems like the best time for people to start doing something like this, or to really start anything new, I guess, is that transition periods.
Yeah, and really to do something for yourself too. I mean, you're not only helping yourself mentally, but physically, so.
Yeah, that's what you see on through hikes too. There's kind of two age groups. The 20-something kids that are like just out of college, and the retirees.
Right.
Now their kids are off in school and they're not really working anymore.
Yeah.
So now they have time to do something for themselves
right.
too. Could you tell me about that first trip on the AT?
Yeah, so a number of years ago I had this master plan. I had finally had some time to myself and was planning on doing a big, well, I'd say I don't want to call it a big section of a hike, but for me it was going to be a big section, considering I had never stepped foot on the Appalachian Trail or the AT. And so I had, studied the maps, researched gut hooks, the AT guide by AWOL, sent my food drops out and everything, thought I was prepared, and drove out to Virginia, started my hike the next day, and out of a 10-day hike, I ended up doing basically overnight hike. And that was it. I was done after that. So
what was your motivation to try that in the first place?
My motivation was, at the time, I was kind of in a place, I was in a transition between jobs, and I had the time to do that. And I just felt like I needed to get outdoors. I felt like I needed to get away from, I don't want to say get away. I feel like I needed to kind of take some time for myself, as we just said earlier, and experience something that I had been wanting to do for quite a while.
So what surprised you about that? Like, what were you not prepared for?
So I would say physically I was in good shape. Gear-wise, I wasn't in bad shape. I probably could have selected a better pack than I did. I ended up, one of the big mistakes I made was the night before the trip, or actually the morning of the trip, my friend was dropping me off at the trailhead, and I stopped at a big box store and I started picking up stuff that I didn't need. And so I think mentally, so gear-wise, I was sitting pretty good. I didn't have an issue there. Food, I was, too much food, as most people do. I think mentally, it surprised me that I thought I was, I'd spent 4 years in the Marines, 3 years in the Navy. I was, been in the fire service for a number of years as a full-time firefighter, and thought I was mentally prepared to deal with it. And I wasn't, to be honest with you. I got out there and I psyched myself out. I think I was pushing too hard the first day, so I started getting like cramps like by noon, which is not good. Obviously, I wasn't drinking enough water. But I think a lot of being outdoors by yourself is a huge mental game.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think that's what I like about it the most.
Yeah.
Especially doing it by yourself.
Right.
Yeah, it's just kind of like you against yourself out there.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk more about your military career? Like, do you feel like that prepared you for this at all?
I would say that it helped a little bit as far as planning, and you can plan anything you want when you go on a hike or any outdoor adventure, but it never turns out the way you want it to most of the time, at least. I think that the biggest part of the military that helped me out was just being able to know that, you have to trust your gut, right, when you're out there. So in that instance, when I was on the AT, I trusted my gut to know that I mentally wasn't in the headspace that I needed to be to finish that section. And that's for a number of reasons, but I think that maybe some people may have pushed on and maybe even gotten injured or made some poor decisions. I don't really know. But I think that probably one of my strengths in that situation was knowing mentally where I was and being able to face that and accept it and make the decision I made to come off the trail at the time. So, yeah. But I to be honest with you, like in the military, I did supply, so it wasn't like I was infantryman out there. And I feel like a lot of the survival skills or that type of discipline that you get in the military maybe doesn't really translate over to recreational backpacking, or even if you want to call yourself a professional backpacker. I mean, you're using different systems. Your weight is all different. A lot of people ask questions about using MREs. I see on Facebook posting groups, and that's what the military uses. And so yeah, I mean, I feel like mentally it helped a little bit, but I feel like it's a different. It's just a different type of experience outdoors.
Yeah, I've wondered about that. How similar it is, based on the gear that military uses and the training and the way that they like live outside basically when they have to.
Yeah, I think that it probably would benefit some people. There's obviously a lot of people that spend time in the military that are trained in outdoor survival and living off the land and stuff like that. That's not me. I go out there with what's on my back, pretty much like probably 75% of the backpackers, and that's what I'm using. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, if there's an emergency or something like that, and you need to build an emergency shelter, I mean, that training would come in handy if you had that experience from the military. But that wasn't really my experience in the military, so I couldn't really fall back on that if I had to.
So when was that first trip on the AT?
I believe that was in July or August of 2015. Yeah.
Okay. So what happened after that? More motivated to try it again?
Yeah, I definitely was. Actually, it pushed me kind of to the point where I'm at right now with this company, and I guess in my outdoor career. I came back with my tail between my legs. I think I got to about Ohio. Actually, I got to West Virginia, and I'm sitting in the car driving, and I'm thinking, what am I doing? Like, I have all this time off. I've planned this for months and months and months, and I just left. Like, I kind of felt a little bit disappointed in myself that I had just so easily given up, but at the same time, I knew I needed to go back home, regroup, put my gear in order, and then try it again. I definitely wasn't going to quit after that, but there was a lot of I think a lot of looking into myself and thinking like, hey, you know what, maybe you're not the person that you thought you were able to handle this stuff without more experience, I guess, or without being mentally in a better space to handle that isolation that you feel sometimes when you're by yourself out in the trail.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest benefits about doing this stuff, is that it forces you to kind of look within yourself and really understand who you are and what you're prepared for. Right. And what you're not prepared for too. Yeah. And that's really valuable stuff.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because like from that point to where I'm at now, I went out, was it last year? I can't remember. I think it might have been in fall of 2019. I went out and did it was supposed to be like a 4 or 5 day section on the AT. It was supposed to be about 70 miles. And I knocked it out in like 3 days, like just under 3 days, which, I mean, I was flying. And so it's kind of cool from where I sit to see myself progress from that point where, I couldn't even do an overnight, and then to be able to do almost 70 miles in just about 3 days. And I was having a blast out there. So it was kind of cool to see that aspect. And a lot of times when I'm out with the company, I'm out and I'm backpacking, but I'm not really there for myself. So while I'm out on, a trip with clients, obviously I'm worried about their safety, making sure we're on the right trail, making sure we're keeping on track with certain things, and making sure, everybody has what they need. And it's not necessarily about me. I'm still experiencing the trail and having a good time, but I'm in a different mindset when I'm with the company. So.
Yeah, how do you balance that? Is that hard sometimes? Do you just want to have your own experience?
No, it's really not that hard, because I know as a guide being out there with the clients, I know why I'm out there. I mean, I'm out there with the intent of making sure that my guests and my clients, we call them family really, but that they're having a good time and that they're being taken care of. And it shows. It's nice to see the reviews that we get when people come back from the trips. It's nice to know that people are recognizing that, but it's to answer your question, no, it's really not that hard. I hate to say it's a job because it's a fun job, but that's my goal, is to take care of the clients when we're out there. So
that makes sense. Yeah. You go into it with that mindset, so you kind of have that expectation of what it's going to be like. What do you think the benefits of spending time in nature are?
The benefits of spending time out in nature, I think the biggest thing is, I think humans in general don't take enough time for themselves. I mean, we have careers, we have kids, we have people relying on us for certain things. We have, calendars that are full of different events and things like that. And I think especially with COVID happening really in 2020, I think a lot of people had the chance to look back and when they weren't able to do all those things, I wonder if, to me, it almost seems like a lot of people would say, we're not taking time as individuals or as families to do stuff as a unit. It's, we got to get the kids here, or I got to be there, or I got this meeting to go to. And so I think that people spending time outdoors just lets you get away from all that, really. And, whether you're by yourself or as a family or with a friend or a group of friends, taking that time to just, even if you don't turn your cell phone off, even if you're using it for navigation or pictures, to not worry about who's calling me, who's texting me, I got to check my social media. Just taking that time to unwind and not live on the schedule. When you're on the trail, we live by the sun, right? We wake up with the sun, we go to sleep with the sun when the sun goes down. And that's not normal for us. And it takes people a lot of time, I think, especially if you're new to being outdoors. A lot of people aren't comfortable with that. They feel like, I know for a fact a lot of our clients, and even me, I go back to my tent and I'm on my phone. And I might not be scrolling through social media, but I'm probably watching something on Netflix or, looking at the pictures for the day. I think people just need to take that time to not live by their phone or a certain schedule and just decompress and get away from that.
Definitely. You touched on a few things there. Taking time for yourself. And I think the lack of distractions too, because we're so used to so many distractions in this regular life. Getting away from that is really big. Yeah. I forget which direction I wanted to go with that. But yeah, taking time for yourself, I think that's super important, because a lot of people, they have really good intentions and they like want to help people and they want to make the world better and all that stuff. But I feel like you can't do that until you've helped yourself and like made yourself into like a well-rounded person. So you kind of have to make yourself into this well-rounded person before you can help the world.
Yeah, and you know, there's a lot of times like you have to be mentally, you have to be in a good headspace with yourself. I feel like when you go outdoors, because if you're not, man, that can mess with you big time. And again, like going back to my first trip on the AT, you know, all you have time to do is think when you're out there. You walk and you think. And so if you're not in a good space, maybe that's not the right thing to say, but being in a good headspace, I think definitely helps, I guess is what I should say. Mm-hmm. If you're not ready to go out there and deal with things that are in your head when you're backpacking, then, you know, I don't know. I just know that there was a number of years where I was out backpacking, and every time I was out there, I'm thinking of, and I still do that to this day, but it bothered me. Like, I have kids, so I'm like, I'm out here backpacking. You know, maybe it's my one big trip for the year, but I feel guilty because I'm not at home with my kids, even though I've been with them for the last X amount of days, you know. So I think you have to be in a good, and like I said, like that trip when I was on the AT, when I crushed out all those miles, like I was out there for a reason. And I went out there to kind of beat myself up mentally and physically to see what I was really capable of. And, you know, for me, taking a trip on my own, I get about a week time and that's it. And so I had given myself 5 days to do that hike. I did it in a lot shorter period of time, but I was in a good space. And I felt like that was kind of like my breaking point to say, you know what, I'm okay with, like, if I never do another trip like this by myself again, I'm okay, because I know what I did in those 3 days. I know I could do it if I had to again, or, you know, even spend a couple weeks out there. But I was mentally able to do that because I allowed myself to be in that space. And prior to that, I was not in that same space.
Okay, that's interesting. So you feel like you weren't being pulled back to your obligations back in regular life on that trip?
Yeah, I think that, you know, for maybe once in my personal backpacking career, I was able to just accept the fact that I was going to be out there for a week and everything back home was going to be what it was. And, you know, the world's going to go on back home without me. So, which allowed me then to focus on the hike, which was good.
Yeah, I still deal with that sometimes. Like, just random thoughts about regular life pop up into my head.
Yeah.
And they kind of pull me off the trail for hours at a time. Then I realized, like, I haven't even seen anything for the past couple hours. I've just been looking down at my feet the whole time.
Right.
Usually it takes me like a day or two before I kind of like leave that mindset behind, and then I'm more kind of living in the present moment. Then you really feel like you're a part of the wilderness, like you're actually out there. Can you give me your definition of nature? Like, what does that mean to you?
Man, my definition of nature, I guess to me it's all encompassing. You know, the sky, the sun, the rocks, the trees. I don't know that I'm very good at giving you like a Webster's dictionary version of that, but you know, to me it's everything from the soil on the earth to the sun, and just accepting that and being respectful to that. And that's a huge part of what our company focuses on, is informing people or helping people make the right decisions when they're out there. We do require, you know, leave no trace awareness. We highly encourage people to have that before they step foot on the trail or outdoors with us. But yeah, that's kind of a broad question, and I'm not really sure I'm able to define that. But essentially, you know, everything, like I said, everything from the soil to the sun to the, you know, the bugs that are crawling around in your boots when you take them off, the birds making noise, the animals in the water, the fish. It's kind of all encompassing to me.
Okay. Yeah, I think my point for asking that is because I'm going to ask that to everybody, and I'm trying to see if everybody has the same idea about what nature is, or if different people have different ideas of what nature is.
Yeah, I guess I look at mine more as a as like not necessarily ideas, but hard and fast things you can see or touch. I guess the other side of that too is mentally, like, our yoga instructors will say when they instruct yoga, we're grounding ourselves on the earth. And so a lot of yoga instructors don't like to wear shoes because they want that connection to the earth, which I understand. It makes sense. And so all of that kind of, I guess, is rolled into that ball of nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something about getting out there that has some sort of benefits. Because with this project being called Mind, Body, and Soul, one of the aspects is body, and that's going to be we're going to take a look at the physical body and how it changes when you spend time out in nature. But the more we dig into this, the more I'm realizing that a lot of these changes are kind of just like exercise. And you could do exercise anywhere. You don't have to be in nature for it. So I'm trying to figure out what's like special about nature that's actually good for the body.
I think that, and we kind of touched on this before, but waking up with the sun and going to bed with the sun, that's how people used to live a long time ago. There was no alarm clocks. The alarm clock was the sun waking you up. Now, going into the mental aspect of nature, I think that, again, being of sound mind, and when I say that, I mean like being comfortable with yourself, knowing what you're capable of, knowing if you're out there for a purpose. Is it to get from point A to point B, or maybe you're doing a canoe trip or something like that, and you got to get back to your spot. But basically, you have to be harmonious with nature. You can't fight it, right? If there's a thunderstorm and you're trying to paddle across a lake, that's to me you can't do that. You got to work with the weather you have and the weather conditions you have, and I guess that would kind of be like maybe like the physical side, but also the mental side of being one and being in tune with nature. Looking up and seeing the clouds. What are the clouds doing? If you're going over a pass, you got to get up there before the afternoon and paying attention to what the weather's doing. That to me is part of the mental side of nature, being connected to nature and recognizing that. I would say it probably takes me, or I've never really asked my clients this, but probably like that third day is when I start feeling comfortable being outdoors, because the first day it's all new. The second day you're like, okay. It's like when I go backpacking. The third day my body's sore because I don't do this all the time. And then my body's kind of just given up and said, okay, I get it. This is what we're going to do. We're going to be walking. Your shoulders are going to hurt. One of the big things I think that helps too for me and then our clients is doing some yoga out when we're out on our trips, and at least stretching at a minimum. That we've had so many clients comment on the fact that it helps and how good they feel after that, and they're not feeling sore afterwards. But I think a big part of what it does also is it allows us to mentally take a break and check in with one another instead of just being on a death march for the day and maybe stopping at noon for lunch. We're stopping periodically to stretch, take our packs off, check in with one another. And I think that helps people kind of bring the day's hike back together.
That's a good point, to break up the day like that so you're not on that death march, because backpacking can definitely turn into that.
Yeah.
But I've done that way too often, just being on that death march. And,
right.
I mean, sometimes you have to get miles in or whatever, but it kind of takes the fun out of it.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah, it makes it a job instead of something fun you're doing.
Mm-hmm. I like what you said too about trying to paddle across a lake when there's a storm or something. Like, I think that's one of the benefits about being out in nature, is that it forces you to realize that you have to be subordinate to something. Like, nature is kind of bigger and more powerful than we are, and that's kind of like a humbling thing, and it's just good for our character, I think. Yeah,
it definitely, I mean, you could make it an analogy and look at life and say, if I'm dealing with something turbulent in my life, do I want to paddle through that, or do I want to sit back and wait for it to pass and then deal with it maybe when you're in the right frame of mind, or things have cleared up a little bit? So
yeah, it definitely changes the way you approach things in regular life too. And yeah, lots of benefits to that there. Do you consider yourself religious or spiritual in any way?
I would say that I don't necessarily consider myself religious. I think that maybe a little bit more spiritual in the sense that there's a greater power than just the human soul. I don't know if that makes sense, but I grew up as a Catholic, going to church every Sunday, and went to Catholic school for 8 years, and then to a Catholic high school for a couple of years. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a greater power out there. I don't know, maybe that's nature, and a lot of people will comment like, oh, well, the outdoors, the forest is my church, right? And so, however people need to find peace in their lives, whatever spirituality they believe in, if the outdoors helps them with that, then, so be it. But I wouldn't say I'm a practicing Catholic or anything like that, so.
Okay. Yeah, I like that idea of nature being church.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I'm going to be talking to a guy who's like a pretty devout Christian. He goes and he does missions and stuff like that. And we've had some good conversations just over email about his Christianity and connection to nature and stuff like that. So I'm kind of interested in that idea.
Yeah, I think it all, again, it's wherever you're coming from in your headspace. If that's your background and that's how you grew up and what you believe in and what you practice, then if it helps you as a person grow and helps you be a better person, then, I'm all for it. I'll give you an example. Like, what does the outdoors do for me? Maybe you're going to ask that question. I don't know, but dealing with the profession that I deal with, I've been able to use the outdoors and nature and spirituality, if you will, to just leave that at the door. When I leave work, I leave it there because I've been able to use the outdoors to help me kind of, I don't want to say get away from that, but to help take my mind off of some of that stuff. And so it's a huge, what am I trying to say? So like mentally it helps me kind of deal with everyday life, if you will. So.
Yeah, do you feel like you return to everyday life with a better perspective or way of looking at things?
I think it kind of helps me take a little bit of a, I'm the kind of person that I'm kind of always going. Got to do this, got to do that. I got this schedule and I got to be at work at a certain time. I got to pick up my kids. I got to go to this, I think it helps me slow down a little bit and say, or, if there's those times throughout the week or the month or the year where you're kind of depressed, like, oh man, it's winter right now, it's January, like I can't really get outdoors like I want to. Like, I know once spring comes, I'm going to be busy with this company, so it gives me something to look forward to. A lot of people probably with COVID haven't been able to take vacations. We were able to be lucky enough to, or we were lucky enough to be able to run a few events during that time with the proper precautions. We felt we have a COVID policy in place, but just knowing that being outdoors was within reach is a huge stress relief and helps me kind of separate like my personal life, my work life, and kind of deal with both of those individually. So.
Yeah, that's definitely helpful. I forget, did you say what you're doing for a living now?
Yeah, so I've been a firefighter, professional career firefighter for 20 years. So, paramedic firefighter.
Yeah, you must see some kind of horrific stuff every once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some bad things that I've seen, but really what it is our sleep patterns are disturbed because we're being woken up at night for calls, which is our job. So that plays a huge factor in things. Actually, the number one killer of firefighters is heart disease. So, and there's a lot of contributing factors to that. There's being obese, smoking, drinking, but having a disrupted sleep pattern is also one of those. And I think, again, going back to living by the sun on the trail, that helps me, I guess I don't want to say catch up on my sleep because I don't know that I sleep 100% that well outdoors, but it does definitely help me, again, get away from that and decompress a little bit from that professional side of my life. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found there's something about when you do a long hike, your body's exhausted, but your mind is taking a break.
Yeah.
Even if you are thinking about stuff during the day, you come back feeling rejuvenated, even if you can like barely walk because your body's so sore.
Yeah, I mean, on the trail, your only job is to put one foot in front of the other, really. I mean, that's your responsibility for the day.
Yeah, it takes a lot of mental stress off of the normal life, I guess. This is a pretty broad question, too. What do you see are like common problems in the average American lifestyle?
Well, again, getting back to not taking time for yourself, people, I think, just need to take more time to themselves. And it's hard because trying to be a responsible adult, trying to be a responsible parent, I'm not saying to neglect your kids or your responsibilities, but we have to set time aside for ourselves, whether it's to go for a walk outdoors, even if it's locally, taking a yoga class, going fishing, whatever you like to do. I think at the root of a person or as being a human, you have to take time for yourself. If you're not mentally and physically well, that's going to project onto other areas of your life, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. If you want to be that responsible adult that takes care of your kids, you'll do that better if you take time for yourself.
I believe that's true, yeah.
I always compare our lifestyle to the way that people used to live in like hunter-gatherer days.
Yeah.
Because that's like 90% of human history. So I kind of think that like the way people were living back then is kind of how our biology is wired, and we still need a little bit of that stuff.
Yeah.
And they did do a lot of stuff on their own in silence, like just walking around, gathering food or hunting or something like that. So that was kind of like built into the lifestyle. Those people had a lot of time to just think about stuff. And today we have like almost no time to just think.
Right.
And when we do, then the phone comes out or whatever, and there's some sort of distraction.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, even prior to COVID, when kids were in school and parents, whether they were stay-at-home parents or career parents working a regular job or whatever they were doing, you may have not been with your kids during the day, but you were still doing something. For the most part, I would say this is kind of a general statement, but so even though you're by yourself at home, like you said, you still have your phone, you still have emails coming in, you got to do laundry, there's a million things that we do during the day. And so even if you're by yourself at home, you're still not getting away from all that stuff. So again, that's why I believe so much in the outdoors and just getting outdoors. And even if you're with your family, watching your kids run around. I mean, how good does it feel to watch little kids run around in a state forest or something like that and not see them on their phones or, they're happy out there. And it's funny because you put kids in an environment like that and they don't have their phones or their tablets or any other distractions with them, they're going to find something to play with. I'll give you an example. So a couple of years ago, I took my son to Colorado and we did a couple days hike up in, I think it was the Indian Peaks Wilderness. But I bought him his first knife, and it was a nice knife. It was not cheap. And so we did our hike, and we got to the lake that we were going to camp at, and I think I was setting up the tent and get everything kind of in order. And then I looked kind of down into a clearing and saw my son sitting on some wood, and he was whittling with this knife that I bought him. And my first thought was to tell him, hey, be careful, right? But I bought him this knife. I have to trust him. I saw that he was taking care in what he was doing. And so then I kind of like later on mentioned like, hey, what are you doing down there? I'm like, and he said, well, what do you expect me to do? There's nothing else to do. And I was like, he's got a point. But as much as I didn't want to see him playing with that knife, I was glad to see him doing something other than sitting on a phone or an iPad or something like that. So.
Yeah. And it's like they're using their creativity in that way too, just to like find something to do.
Right.
And that's just good for the mind, I think, too.
Yeah.
Because in nature, nothing is made for us in nature. Like we have to like take nature and kind of use it for our means. But in regular life, like everything is made for us.
Right.
And I'm still trying to understand like the significance of that, but I think it has like a big impact in the way that we like do things or the way that we use tools and the way that we kind of like make stuff in the world. Because we kind of expect everything to be like just exactly like perfect.
Right.
Because it kind of is in the regular world. but in nature we have to like make things how we want it. So there's like a creative element involved there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, totally, because, I was out with our last group in November, and there was a storm was going to roll in that night, and I didn't have enough tent stakes for whatever reason. I actually gave some of my tent stakes to another client, I think, because we were going to try to secure something down a little bit more than we normally would have. So I was short a couple tent stakes. So I had to make tent stakes, right? Which is not that hard. You just take a couple sticks. But I mean, going back to what you said, like a long time ago, that's all they would have had, right? We wouldn't have had these titanium or aluminum tent stakes, and they just would have used the resources around them. So, and that's what you resort to. You live, I mean, you know this, you live out of your pack, and what you have is what you have. I mean, when you're out on the trail in the middle of nowhere, there's no running to the store to get something that you may have forgotten or need. You have to make do. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot, to me, well, it is more of a simple lifestyle, just knowing that. And it wasn't even like I was mad about it. It was like, well, it is what it is. I guess I got to figure it out.
So, yeah, it's just like, that's reality now.
Yeah.
So you make it happen.
Right.
Yeah, I forgot all my tent stakes on one trip this summer. So I had to get some sticks, and I was just carrying around sticks for the rest of the trip to use as stakes.
Yeah.
It worked. I mean, it was like a little more work and kind of frustrating, but
yeah,
it doesn't matter. Didn't really change the trip at all. Have you had any health problems, like physical problems with your body, that have kind of been helped by nature?
No, I wouldn't say so. I do have trouble sleeping in a tent. I would wake up with my hips being sore. This is not like a chronic thing. Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
I'm just wondering if like nature has helped you heal any parts of your body, basically, if you've been dealing with...
No, I've been pretty lucky. Yeah, I've been pretty lucky health-wise, so I haven't really had any ailments that nature's helped me with, but...
Have you ever gone out into nature with the intention of healing? And this could be more than just your body. It could be healing, I don't know, trauma or problems in your mind or anything like that.
No, I would say, again, kind of reverting back to that last Appalachian Trail hike that I did, I wouldn't say that I was necessarily trying to deal with any trauma, more of a mental block that I had in my own self. And that was just specifically with going out there on that trail, hiking, by myself for a couple days. Prior to that, I had usually done it with another person. In the last couple trips that I made between that first trip and the last one, I was always out with another person. So this was going to be like, and so when you're hiking with people, you have to, most of the time you're going to be traveling along with them or meeting up with them at a certain time. Or if you want to hike with that person, you're going to have to adjust your pace to that person, even if it's within staying within a mile or so of that person. But on that trip, I was out, again, like I had mentioned before, I was out to see what I could do mentally and physically. And so that's probably the only time that I've really been out there with the intent of dealing with something mentally, and that was just a small thing that was in my head, so it wasn't like it was any type of major trauma or anything like that.
Okay. Do you prefer hiking alone or with people? Do you care either way?
I don't really have a preference. I'm more apt to hike with and more mentally prepared to hike with people, since, again, that's what I do with my company, or if I'm out with my girlfriend, we're hiking together and we stay fairly close to one another. I don't think I have any issue or preference to either or.
Okay. Could you talk about the benefits of both with people and hiking alone? Yeah, so hiking by yourself, again, allows you to just really focus on your hike and what you're doing out there, and kind of dealing with, you're having those inside your head conversations back and forth, and able to kind of focus on that, as opposed to being with a group or with another person where you may have to keep checking back to see where they're at, or taking certain breaks, which you might not normally do by yourself, or even worrying about that person's mental well-being, mental or physical well-being. To me, it puts a little bit more of a stressor on you on your hike, and maybe doesn't allow you to focus as much on yourself when you're out there in some instances. Yeah, definitely. That's why I was kind of wondering if it was harder for you to do it with a backpacking group that you're kind of responsible for. But I guess you're going into that knowing that that's what it is.
Yeah, with the company, I'm definitely focused on those clients and making sure that they're taken care of in all aspects. I guess with myself, I can be a little bit more liberal, and I can, if I want to push a couple extra miles, I can do that. If I hammock now, I don't use a tent in most places, so I can kind of push the envelope a little bit and keep going past that campsite that I may have stopped at if I was with a group or another individual because they had a tent.
Yeah, just more balanced that way, I guess. Could you talk about the differences between a day on trail versus a day in regular life? I'm sure there's a lot, but
yeah, a day in regular life, in most instances, you're waking up by an alarm clock, and you have to be certain places at certain times. There's responsibilities as a parent, as an adult. Out on the trail, the only responsibility you have is to put one foot in front of the other, and you wake up typically kind of when you want, and you know what you got to do for the day. If I have to make a certain amount of miles, it's up to me whether or not I want to sleep in. And I'll be honest with you, like most of the time, it's funny. When I'm at home, I'm waking up anytime between 5:30 and 7 normally, just automatically, even without an alarm clock. But on the trail, I can actually sleep in, and I don't want to get out of bed. Where, even when I'm at home and I don't have anywhere to be that day, I usually wake up at a certain time, and I'm up doing things by a certain time. I just feel that I need to be doing something. Where on the trail, I allow myself a little bit more leeway to take my time, because I know if I sleep in for an extra half hour and take time getting out of camp, I can make that time up on the trail if I have to. So, and the only responsibility I have on the trail is to put one foot in front of the other. And if I'm by myself, it doesn't even matter where I'm camping that night, because I can just stop when I get tired if I have to.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really like about long distance hikes is not knowing where you're going to sleep that night. And you just kind of figure it out when it's time to pick a place to camp. Then I usually start looking like an hour before.
Right.
It's time to set up camp, and usually you find something.
Yeah, and I've caught myself even doing this specifically with the clients, but even in my own, I guess when I'm out by myself, when I know I'm going to stop at a certain time and it's getting close to that time, like you said, if I pass a good spot, I'm like, oh, that's a good camp spot. I'll look at my watch and I'll say like, okay, it's 5:15. So that way if I keep going and it's like 5:30, 5:45 and I haven't found that next spot where I want to go, I go, well, at least I know 30 minutes back there's a good spot. Mm-hmm. So
another pretty broad question. What role do you think nature plays in our society? Like how does a general society view nature?
I think that most people view nature as an opportunity for recreational, a place to perform recreational activities, whether it's kicking a soccer ball around or using the field for soccer games or sports. I think that most people in civilization don't necessarily view nature or the outdoors as a place to heal themselves, mentally or spiritually, if you will. I think it's just kind of a place people go to have fun, and that's great. But I don't know that most people would view nature as a place to go take time for themselves and to go out there with that intent to focus on themselves.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's a good thing that people think it's a place to recreate and get outside and get some exercise and stuff, but I think there's like a lot more there.
Yeah.
That we could kind of realize and take advantage of, I guess.
Right.
What would your advice be to somebody who's never left the city and they're kind of thinking about getting into something like this, getting into hiking?
Yeah, it all goes back to what we were first kind of talking about was just experience it. Go outdoors, find a spot away from the busy area that you live in and just allow yourself that time to relax and enjoy the outdoors and take in all the sounds of water, the animals. Even if you're going out with your family, the sound of your kids having fun, running around, playing. I know you can do that in a public park in the city, but it's completely different when you get out and you can actually not see a tall building next to you or even see power lines for that matter or anything, cell towers. I think that allowing yourself to get outdoors and experience that is like, there's so many benefits that people don't even realize, and it's hard to really put that into words to someone who's never experienced that. But I would encourage people to just go out there and at least day hike, get out to a nature preserve, experience that, walk around. And when you're ready to take that next step, whether it's, in the next couple of years or when your kids finally go away to school or whatever that transition is in your life, to take that time to allow yourself to fully enjoy the outdoors and, whether it's camping, backpacking, canoeing, skiing, anything.
Yeah, definitely. So now we can kind of focus on the company too, and I'm especially interested in kind of like the journey that you see people go on, especially if this is their first trip or something. Like what are they like before they trip, and what are they like after the trip, and how does that transition or transformation kind of happen?
What are they like as a person, you mean? Or
what's their like attitude about it all? Like, are they nervous, or how does that change?
I think that most people come into our trips feeling uncomfortable, which is normal. It's a new, for a lot of people, it's new. But I think that I would say a good portion of the people that come into our trips are coming in with an open mind. They've taken the time to sign up. They've done the research. In some instances, I've talked to them, or my business partner Jennifer's talked to them prior to the trip. We spend a lot of time actually with clients before trips even happen, sending them emails with the information, with weather updates. Like I said before, I've done some videos on like, hey, this is how you may want to pack your pack, or here's some ideas on this. In some instances, we may send out maps ahead of time. One of the big things that we've done is we've created a separate Facebook page for people that are signed up for our events. And so what they can do then, and I think this has helped a lot with people feel a little bit more comfortable coming to to us as a new client. We have threads on there for each event. So if a person's going to a beginner backpack trip, they can go right to that thread for their specific event, and they can ask any questions, which is nice. I've also asked in the past some former clients to introduce themselves or give a statement on like what they were worried about and what was the end result of that. So to have those discussions, via social media before a client even comes, I think helps them feel a little bit more comfortable. But I do think that a lot of people are a little bit nervous, which, again, and I don't think it's even really about being around other people. I think it's more about they're worried about their gear. Is my sleeping bag going to be warm enough? Did I buy the right tent? And so, I think there's a lot of that. I don't want to call it worry, but those thoughts in people's heads before they come to our events.
Okay, I mean, that makes sense. There's like a lot of unknown going into something like that.
Right.
There's so much that could go wrong.
Yeah.
So what's it like on the first day? What are like the group dynamics like?
Yeah, so depending on our event, we do offer transportation for all of our events. And like I said, we do typically leave out of this headquarters, if you will, in Huntley. But one of the good things about it is because we do transport people, it allows them to meet each other prior to the event. And so even if you're coming into our event and a little bit nervous about what you're about to experience, typically there's people in that van that have been out with us before, and the stories that are told and the laughs that are had, I think they really help people have people feel more comfortable going out with us and being in that group. I think that that's when people kind of take that initial transition from signing up online and now it's actually happening to feeling like, oh, I'm actually part of this, and like these are the people I'm going to be spending the next 3 or 5 days with. So I think that puts a lot of people at ease. How does
the group dynamics change over the trip? Like, do you see friendships being formed and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'd say that friendships are formed almost instantly. I mean, again, making that ride to the event in the van and then unpacking and getting everything offloaded, I think people want to gravitate towards one another. I think that's human nature. And so feeling comfortable with the people that are there, knowing that they've experienced this before, I think that breaks down a lot of the walls or insecurities that people have. And then I think it almost seems to me that the little groups or the partnerships or friendships are formed almost instantly. And we know when we're out there, like, this is us. Like, when we go out on our canoe trip for the week, like this is our group of 9 people that we're going to be with for the next 4 or 5 days. And so I would say 99.9% of the time, there's just that instant pull towards one another, and you just become that unit and that family right away.
Yeah, I've noticed there's something about doing some sort of outdoor adventure together that really, you build some like really strong bonds or ties between people, and it happens really fast.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't really happen in kind of civilization.
No, not at
all. Like you could work with somebody for years and not really be that close to them, and you could go on a trip with somebody for a week and like really get to know that person. Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with, again, a lot of people I think are in a headspace where they're still trying to process being out away from their family or away from their career during that time. And you're like, okay, I know this person's dealing with the same thing. My back might hurt, my feet might hurt, I might have blisters, but you know what? That other person's been out here with me too this whole time, and they're dealing with it and they're not complaining. And it's just, you really don't too often get people complaining about ailments or anything like that really in the outdoors. As miserable as it can be sometimes, people just kind of embrace it. And I think being part of that cohesive unit, that family, kind of helps bond that and make you know that, it's okay. It's okay that I'm dealing with this. I might not be having the best day out here, but I know that they're dealing with the same thing. So yeah, I guess you don't want to be that one person that's complaining all the time. Yeah. And it's really a bummer if there is that one person in the group. Because I've been in those groups too. Yeah. Yeah, luckily we don't deal with that too much. So actually we've hardly ever dealt with it. So that's good. Yeah. How does their confidence level change over time? Oh man, I can tell you that I've seen people go from never sleeping in a tent before their first night, and these are specifically like at our boot camps, to coming off that trail Sunday and like being in tears because they're so proud of themselves for what they just did, and rightly so. A lot of these people, it's a huge, like we keep saying, like it's a huge mental game. I don't want to call it a game, but it's a huge mental aspect, dealing with processing all of your stuff that you're dealing with back home, and then being out there and then looking at yourself and saying, wow, I really did this. Like, and I can't say that we've ever had anybody show up and be like, no, there's no way I can do this, because otherwise why would they be there? Yeah. But I think that some people might have it in their back of their minds that like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't want to be the slowest person. We have, every trip we probably have 6 people say, just so you know, I'm going to be the slowest person. And I always say, well, everybody can't be the slowest person, so someone's going to be in the back. And even if that happens, Jennifer's usually in the back with the back group, so she's going to be the slowest person technically. So you won't be the slowest person. But yeah, people come into our events maybe with some self-doubt, and I've seen them leave with so much pride. And we've had reviews where people have made that comment that they feel so proud of themselves and that they know they could go out even on their own and do, whether it's a weekend trip or whatever. And that's our goal, is to get people to be in that space where they feel like they can do that. Do people ever open up to you about why they're out there? I think that those conversations probably do come up. Yeah, I mean, I can't say that we've ever had anyone specifically with a situation where, it's something specific that they're dealing with that is the reason they're out there. I'm sure people have their reasons. Maybe some of those conversations are had amongst the clients, and maybe some of the other staff members may have heard some of those stories, but I haven't really heard anything. I take that back. We did have one lady who, this was our first year being in business, actually our first real event. She said that her husband had passed away, maybe like 6 months prior to that. And so she found us online because she wanted to take the time to do something for herself. And so she went out there with the intent of, I guess, doing something that would make her feel positive about herself, because she'd been dealing with that loss of her spouse prior to that. So yeah, the next guy that I'm going to talk to later today, he also runs a guided backpacking company, and he kind of focuses on that a little bit more. He kind of brings people out who are like looking to heal from something, whether it's trauma or something that happened in the past or anything like that. So we did recently bring on another member to our team, and her name's Kim, and she actually has she's certified as a counselor.
She's a licensed counselor. So I'm interested to see where our company goes in that aspect, possibly with some meditation and some self-healing on that side of the business that I never thought we would actually, be going down that road. But that's something that, we're looking into. And like we keep saying, like, nature helps people heal. And so to me, having someone who is a licensed counselor be able to maybe help people through some of their issues that they're dealing with is, it can only be a good thing. So.
Yeah, I think that could be extremely valuable for some people.
And I kind of hesitate to even talk about it because there's so many avenues, so many things we could do with that side of the company that I'm not even aware of at this point. So, like I said, it'll be interesting to see where we head down that path with. And essentially, when this company was founded, that was what we wanted to do. Whether I knew it or not, part of the reason I started the company was to help people heal, because I was at a space where I was dealing with issues in my life, and it seemed natural for me to go outdoors to try to help with some of those issues. And so then that led to helping other people with some of that stuff that I'm probably not even aware of at this point.
Yeah, I think the same thing happened to me too. I was basically drawn to the outdoors because it gave me a chance to just kind of figure myself out and understand like what I wanted out of life. I was kind of feeling lost or not really sure like what I was going to do with my life, or didn't know what my purpose should be or what kind of path I should go down. And I always felt just like safe out in the wilderness. It was like a place where I could just kind of be myself and explore who I am or what I want to do.
And what a great way for people to, we keep touching on like building yourself up and feeling like you're taking that time for self-care. Like, what a great way to do it in the outdoors. And because if you can tackle anything outdoors, you can pretty much tackle anything in real life, right? You kind of put that into perspective and say, well, I dealt with this. If you do a thru hike, like that almost to me seems like a year worth of college, right? Because how much experience are you getting out there living in the real world and living on bare bones and living just with what you have in your backpack, really?
Yeah, it brings you in touch with reality. Like there's no fooling yourself out there.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely good practice for just like life skills, basically. Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you were dealing with and kind of what drew you out to nature to think about that stuff?
Yeah.
You don't have to get into specifics or anything.
Yeah, so at the time I was transitioning between my career fire departments and was also dealing with my my ex-wife who was kind of suffering from postpartum depression. And prior to that point in my life, I had spent 15, 16 years in my career solely focused on making the profession a better place and doing everything I could to make myself more well-rounded, hands-on wise and education wise. And I never took any time to do the stuff that I wanted to do. And I'm naturally drawn. So if I plan a vacation somewhere, I want to base that vacation on some place where I can go do stuff outdoors. I'm not the kind of person typically where I would go and I can't just go lay on a beach for a week. I feel like I'm missing out on something. So my vacations prior to that, like I said, I had been out snowboarding a little bit in Oregon and backpacking, day hiking, really, and mountain biking in Colorado. But I never really took the time to see nature the way I wanted to. And like, what better way to see it on foot where as long as you're not looking down on your feet, all you have time to do is look around. So going through that point in my life, then I realized it was probably not intentional, but I found that I needed to take that time to kind of focus on myself. And I had the time, so I took the time. And, that's one thing I'll always tell our clients, or anybody really. If you want to get outdoors, you have to make time to do it. You just have to. And everyone's like, well, I'm too busy. I don't have time for this. You do have time for it, and you deserve to take that time for yourself. So going back to that point in my life, I was dealing with my profession at the time. I was dealing with the home issues. which, you know, we were going to therapy, we were following all the routes that we should have taken to try to heal that relationship. But, you know, sometimes those things just can't be repaired. And that's kind of where I was at. And it kind of came upon me, I guess, again, not really, I wasn't really looking for it, but I found the outdoors through that. And then that then led me to starting the company a couple of years later. But I think for me, it gave me a real solid foundation, because I can really understand if people are out there dealing with something, you know, on a personal level or an emotional level. Like, I get it. Like, I understand why someone would want to get out there and experience that and take the time for themselves. So.
Yeah, it's interesting how you don't really have to know what you're looking for, or even maybe you don't know what's wrong, but sometimes a lot of people are just drawn to going outside for some reason, just because they feel like something's missing in their life or something like that. Yeah. And then, all kinds of interesting things happen because of that. Yeah, and I think it just, again, allowing yourself to be vulnerable and just open yourself up to new experiences, you know. Living in that same routine of, you know, again, where I was at, like, if I wasn't at work, I was probably taking a class to get a certification or to benefit myself. And that's great. That's good for the profession and your career. But personally, I didn't feel like I was accomplishing anything. You know, I was doing everything I was doing everything that I thought was the right thing, but I wasn't doing anything for myself at the time. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of like a one-dimensional focus. Like, you're focused on the career, and then probably benefited your career, but maybe not other aspects of life. Right. That's something that I've been kind of trying to learn recently, because lately I've been focused on this stuff, just my projects and hiking and everything. And now I have a girlfriend that we've been together for about a year, and things are getting more serious, and I'm realizing, like, I need to divert some energy towards the relationship now. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. It's aspect in my life. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, and having someone involved in your life who enjoys the outdoors definitely helps. I mean, you know, my ex, I only took a little bit of time out of, like, maybe every other month or every year to do something for myself. And she didn't understand why I wanted to do that. And she felt like I was, you know, maybe not being the proper parent or spouse that I should have been. But I felt like I was, and you can't convince someone otherwise when that's in their head. But it does help to be involved with someone or have people in your life that understand. And my parents have been completely supportive of the outdoors. I mean, they've, you know, in me being in the outdoors and, you know, running this company and stuff like that. So that's kind of nice to have that support. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And my parents too. I've actually been pretty surprised. Like, they never asked me, like, how are you going to make a living with this? How are you actually going to support yourself? Yeah. It was support pretty much the whole way. Yeah. And I was always kind of surprised about that. But it definitely helped. Yeah. And my girlfriend's going to be hiking the CDT next summer too. So we'll see how that goes, because she's not a thru hiker. But she is, like, pretty experienced with the outdoors. Yeah. Well, I think if you have the want to be out there, I think you'll find the will. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that really makes any sense, but... No, I think that's true. Yeah. Yeah, as long as your reasons are good, yeah, you'll make it work. Right. What do you get out of running this company? Like, what does it do for you personally? I like to see people succeed in the outdoors. Well, in life in general, but specifically in the outdoors as it relates to this company. And it's nice to be able to empower people and give people that confidence to go outdoors and experience the outdoors. You know, maybe some of these people would have found other companies to take them out, or maybe they would have eventually gone out on their own. But it's nice to be able to, at the end of a trip, after all the planning and execution's been done, to have those people form those friendships and then come back on more trips with us, or even on their own, but to hear how much fun they've had, and just to go back and look at those pictures, and you know, to know, like, some of these people may have never even seen some of these parts of the United States before, and that's kind of a cool feeling to be able to facilitate that. Yeah, do you get a lot of return customers? Yeah, I'd say probably about 75% of the people that come to our events usually come back. And we've had numerous people come to, like, our first 2 years, pretty much we're at every event.
I think this year, or I should say 2020, kept some people away, obviously, with everything that was going on, but we're starting to see some of those people even sign up for our events this year. So, I mean, going into this year, we have our Isle Royale trip coming up. I can't remember what month it's in, but it's at least 6 or 7 months away. And we have the events already half full with RSVPs. And we don't even have tickets for sale yet. We're still waiting for our permits to be approved. So, and a lot of those people that are signed up for that are RSVP'd for that, are people we've never even met before, new people. So I think that a lot of our clients return, but not only that, then tell their friends about the trips, and then they end up coming, which is nice. So
that's cool. Yeah, people are ready to get outside. I think.
Yeah.
How do you think the whole COVID thing has affected just people's willingness to go outside?
Man, that's a good question. So I think that in some ways, I would say a lot of people that may have not experienced the outdoors are probably spending more time outdoors, because what else is there to do? On the flip side of that, I think that there's probably a good amount of people that normally would do things in groups that are doing that maybe on a limited basis on their own now. So while there's a lot more people, I think, getting outdoors, there's also a lot of people that would have gotten outdoors maybe socially and aren't necessarily doing that because of COVID.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you think they're still getting outside alone, or just not at all at this point?
I think that initially, at least towards the beginning of the year, it seemed to me that people were getting outdoors, but were still afraid of possibly contracting the virus through being outdoors. I think once a little bit more education went out on it, people knew to keep away from one another. Because let's be honest, like, the outdoors were flooded with people this year that normally would not have been out, which is good. It's a good thing. There's two parts to that. I mean, it's a good thing for people to be outdoors, but we also, if you spend any time outdoors this year, you knew that there was a lot more trash and everything this year that wouldn't have normally been there. So there's a lot more impact on, on the outdoors and on nature that wouldn't have normally taken place. So I think that, I can't remember what was the original question. I'm sorry.
I'm not even sure. I think how COVID has changed people's willingness to go outside.
Yeah. So I guess just to recap, then I think a lot of people initially were afraid to be outdoors, but then once a little bit more education on the virus came out, I think they were a little bit more willing to be outdoors. I noticed just in the circle of people that I know through social media that were outdoors seem to be doing stuff in more limited groups outdoors towards the end of 2020, as opposed to the beginning of the year when they weren't really going out. If they were going out, it was on their own. They weren't necessarily in groups. So,
yeah, either way, if they're getting outside, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
It is kind of a downside of a whole bunch of new people going out, though, as I've noticed that too. Places get trashed a little bit easier. I feel like the more time you spend outside, the more you respect it, and you kind of learn that leave no trace ethic. For people who are just getting into it, they don't even understand that that's like wrong.
Right. Yeah, and one of the big things, so my business partner, Jennifer, she is involved in a project called the Illinois Park Project. And so what she does with that is she'll organize campouts at different state parks in Illinois, and then they'll clean up the park on the days that they're there, which is kind of cool. And I'm sure she has a website for that. I apologize, I don't know what it is, but she was not able to do that this year. So one of the things that I tried to do, and one of the avenues that I wanted to try to touch on the outdoors with this company, was conservation. And it's not a huge part of what we advertise, but it's something that we advocate. And so what I would do, the little bit that I could, was, as an example, when we were in Georgia, as I was kind of moving the van up from gap to gap and driving on the mountain roads, I would stop at the waysides and pick up garbage. I'd take pictures, do a couple photo ops with the van, and I would pick up garbage. And not that I saw people necessarily throwing stuff on the ground, but there was a lot of I filled up bags and bags of garbage. And even waiting at like the trailheads for the group to come through, I would pick up. It's not something that I would normally do, but I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, man, there's all this trash on the ground, and I'm just sitting here. Like, it makes sense for me to pick this up. And that's in the spirit of, that is in the spirit of part of the reason why the company exists. Definitely part of the reason in the spirit of what my business partner believes in, and she's involved in that actively. And then actually at our last event, which was in the Shawnee National Forest in November, at the end of the event, when everybody was at the van, I asked the group to grab garbage bags if they felt comfortable and go around and pick up garbage. So we did that, and we ended up with, I think, 3 bags of garbage. So, and it was funny because people were like, looking around, you would have never even known that there was that much garbage, but there was a lot of stuff in the grass and, out of eye's sight off the main road that we picked up, which was kind of cool.
That's interesting. It kind of hides until you start looking for it, and then, there is a lot there.
Right.
Yeah, it's always disappointing to me, especially when I'm, way out in the wilderness, and you find a wrapper or beer can or something like that.
Yeah, and typically we'll pick up that stuff when we see it. We'll, as long as it's not, caked with food or something like that, where it's going to make our pack, exposed to food or anything like that, we'll typically pick that stuff up when we're out on trail.
Mm-hmm. So you kind of talked about your mission with the company to do conservation. Do you have kind of an overall mission for the company?
Yeah, our mission is basically to get people outdoors, and we kind of started focusing on the Midwest, so to expose people to the beauty and the area really in the Midwest. But then we started branching out, and we've been out to Kentucky numerous times. Appalachian Trail. This year we're actually going to Montana. So our focus is really to get people outdoors and to facilitate that in any means possible, whether it's talking them through it up front, renting them the gear. We provide meal packages, just anything we can do to help people get outdoors. This isn't a Fortune 500 company. We're not doing it to necessarily make money. Obviously we need to make money to keep the business alive, but our goal is to get people outdoors and to have them experience that.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of changing a lot of lives, I think, too, by getting people involved in that.
Yeah, we've had a pretty good positive response from it, so that helps keep us going.
What's your purpose for incorporating yoga into doing stuff outside? Yeah,
so getting back into nature and spirituality, it only makes sense to tie in self-care, and I'm not the biggest person as far as knowledge into the yoga, the background of yoga. That's why we have our yoga instructors, but to me it almost goes hand in hand, to be outdoors, to be connected to the earth, to feel one with nature. It just almost seems natural to practice yoga in those spaces. Most people that we get on our trips are not, maybe they've attended some yoga sessions in studios, but what we do with our yoga outdoors is probably nothing like you'll ever experience if you're the kind of person that is predominantly a yoga studio client. So to me it made sense to incorporate the process of being outdoors, taking care of yourself, and allowing yourself to mentally decompress from all that. And I think yoga allows you that opportunity to just slow down, focus on your breathing, focus on being present in that space, and recognizing that and celebrating that, really. The other thing it really helps with is stretching. And I didn't think about this when we first brought yoga into the company or making it part of the company, but we've had so much positive feedback from people that are able to practice yoga, or even just a simple stretch after the day's backpacking is done. It's a matter of night and day how good people feel after doing that, and they're not complaining of being sore that second or third day. They might be a little bit sore, but it's nothing like they would have felt if they would not have done that. So
yeah, for sure. Just hiking in general has definitely shown me how important it is to stretch.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference. And it's gotten to the point where I can just from walking, I can feel where my legs are tight. I can just feel what's going on in my body.
Yeah.
And so I can kind of tell what I need to do. It brings you more in touch with your body too.
Right.
Yeah, that's a big benefit. Yeah, I think that's all I had. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
No, I appreciate you taking the time, and it's kind of been nice to I guess, build our relationship from a point of just contacting you initially and reaching out, and then having you work on a few projects for us, and then to this. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, actually coming out here to meet you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was about time for that.
It's cool. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to subscribe. Then head over to our YouTube channel called Wilderness Mindset, where you'll find a lot of videos that have similar themes.